Hey, what's up guys? This is Paul from Paul's Karts, and what I want to talk about today in this video is a little bit about camshafts, and about camshafts specifically, how duration affects power, where it makes your power in the RPM range, and how it affects the overall power potential of the engine. So what we'll do is we'll go through, I've drawn out basically a few graphs, 7 to be exact, 7 graphs of basically different durations, and how your dyno curve would look. And from that, you'll be able to see how horsepower and torque are relative to each other. So, it's not like you're actually creating more power. You're just shifting things. And I've actually made a great representation of that, which I will go through. It's basically some water in a bottle, which I'll show you the numbers on this. So basically, in order for us to start, I got some marker on my hand here. So this is a camshaft out of a gx200, aftermarket camshaft. So just to let you guys know what duration is first, duration is usually measured at 50 thousandths of an inch. So you'll see on your cam card or on the website, it'll sort of say duration at 50 thousandths. Now what that means is the measurement of when the lift starts to when the lift ends. So where the lobe starts to where the lobe ends, and how many durations of crank rotation or cam rotation is the valve open for. So as these lobes get wider and wider, it has more duration. As the base of this cam gets narrower and narrower, it has less duration. So the amount of duration definitely changes power output in your engine, and can change your power, like where your power is. So say a stock cam, let's just start off here and we can pretty much get into it now. So a stock cam on most GX390s, Predator 212s, most stock engines starts off from 200 to 210 duration. Now that duration at that low of a level, what that's doing is it has minimum time with the valve open. It doesn't have to do with how much how far the valve is being lifted open, but how long the valve is actually open for. So the longer that valve is open for, the bigger breath the engine can take. So they measure the duration at 50 thousandths of an inch. So the stock cam is 200 to 210 duration, which is the first graph I made. Now when you have a duration like that, what it's going to do is, usually the manufacturer has found out the best cam for match to the torque of that engine, to give you the most amount of power potential that engine has overall. To tell you the truth, the stock cams make the most power, and it sounds crazy, but the lower the duration number, the more overall power you make. The more duration you add, the more horsepower you can make, and the more power potential the engine has that you can harness, which can be extremely beneficial, especially in racing applications. But the overall power of the engine is actually down, which sounds insane. So the way I want to show you this, so that you guys can really grasp what duration is, and when you're selecting a cam, this might help you. So let me stand behind the camera and show you what I got going on here. So what I wrote up here is, to have everything optimized is the key. Now these graphs here are based on the engine in a stock form. Like if you change nothing but the camshaft, that's the only way you can represent this. all of these things would evenly change if you started changing compression ratios, valve size, carb size, exhaust, stuff like that. It would skew them all. So these numbers are based off a stock engine if only thing you did was change the cam. So, and take the governor. You take the governor off and change the cam, that's what these numbers are based off of, okay? So, now that has nothing to do if you have a question about, oh, if it has a billet rod, if it has a billet flywheel, those things don't matter. You know, this is just off the stock size, volume of the engine, stock bore, stock stroke, and the cam. I mean, this has stock valves in its stock head, you know, stock stroke, stock bore. You know, the flywheel people, you know, they'll call me looking for a head and they start telling, oh, I got a billet flywheel, a billet rod. Like, that stuff doesn't matter when it comes to, you know, engine numbers. That's just parts and pieces. So, you know, when we look at these graphs here, so this would be like a stock cam. Now, this would be how your power curve would look, your dyno curve. Now, on the bottom, this is RPM, so all these lines going up and down represent RPM. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just as, you know, to have some type of graph. And then up here is horsepower. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So with the stock cam, you know, went to Honda's website, just looked at, on the owner's manual to a GX390, if you type in GX390 specs and tech info, they'll give you a stock graph, dyno graph. So just basically took that. I'll put a picture of it in now. Okay. So, you know, this is basically, it starts off making, you know, 5 horsepower, goes up to 11, and it comes back down. So that's the overall, this area here of all the shaded area, that's all the power it made, you know. So this is its average power. If you added it all up, like took this, you know, 6 plus, you know, if this is 5, then the next one, say it's 7, and then the next one is 8, then the next one's 9, then the next one's 10, the next one's 11. If you just kept adding all these individual sections up, that would come up with the number. So then as we increase duration in camshafts, go to the next size up, 210 to 220, you know, you would start to see this almost like a wave pushing forward. The front would start dropping down and the back would start coming up, and you would just start curving, you know. And then as you go up in duration, 220, 230, you know, it starts getting more peaky. And then as you can see, as this progresses, this effect starts dramatizing. 230, 240. Now remember, this is on a stock engine. Now, this would all change, and you could definitely make these dyno graphs look better by increasing, you know, as duration increases, you want to increase compression. I can give you the conversion ratio again. I've given it to you in another video. I'll give it to you after I'm done showing these graphs, actually. So, I mean, if you optimized every one of these camshafts, I mean, you will still end up with the same amount of power per area, you know what I mean? But you can definitely optimize them so these graphs don't look as bad. Which would mean, I mean, if you optimize this, it would just bring everything up nice and even across. If you optimize this, it would definitely be, you know what I mean? So 240 to 250, it's getting more dramatic. 250 to 260, 260 to 270. So this is basically a representation of the lowest to the highest. You can see this is just this big, broad, what they call power under the curve. And this one doesn't make any power until, you know, it's at a high RPM, and it just makes it and it's done. So it makes more power, but for a less amount of time. So you're basically squeezing all of this down and putting it in one area. Now, I don't know if that's the clear. Oh, I told you I was going to show you. Didn't really plan on showing this, but since I'm talking about it, might as well go through and show it again. This will help you guys out. So this is a compression to duration calculator. So 9-to-1 compression, 204 duration, 9.25 to 1, 208 duration, 9.50 to 1, 212 duration. So if you have like 220, you want 10 to 1, 240, 11 to 1. So 12 to 1 compression is like 250. So if you have like the 260 durations, you want to be like 12.75 to 1. And if you have really high compression, you need a whole lot of duration. So that's how duration relates to your compression ratio. Now you guys, if you want to, I've showed that in other videos, but if you wanted to pause that, go back, take a look at that and copy that down, that's great. Same with this. If you want to, I'll do just the 6 here. If you wanted to maybe screenshot that or whatever. Okay. So that's how that whole thing works out. And I started thinking about this, and you know, the whole concept of it is you're not really making any more power, you're taking from Peter to give to Paul. And you know, by the way, I'm Paul, how you doing? But so here's another way I found out of representing this. I hope I can show this here. Maybe if I move the notebook. Okay, so if you look here, that's pretty much a stock cam, you know, and it's 10 all the way across. All right, so let me just show you what's going on here. Now I've only done this out to 6,000 RPM because it's a scale. And when things are to scale, it doesn't matter if we go to 10, 100, or what, but it's all to scale. These numbers, when we add them up, are going to be an average. So it's weird because I'm kind of holding it down, but trust me, that's 10s all the way across. So that's 10 plus 10 plus 10 times 6. So it's 60. So that's our overall power number. All right. So now that would be basically a 210 to 220 camshaft. Now, I've drawn another line here. And you could see as I tip this, it lines up there. Now we'll just say that's a 230 to 240 duration camshaft. Now this is based off of dyno numbers I could find. So this is a pretty good representation. I'm glad it kind of worked out like this. So we have around here, looks like somewhere around 18 horsepower. Basically this one here looks like it's lining up with like 15, 14, around 10. Maybe 7, 5, 2, and say 1. So when I add that all up, that adds up to 48. So we drop from 60 down to 48. Now if we tip this up to the 20 horsepower mark, like this, you see what's happening to the dyno? You see how your power is getting real peaky? So this is why I thought this was a great representation. Now when I tip this like this, you can see your max power levels going up. But when we add up these hash marks where it lines up on the power potential, our end number comes out to a 45. So this here is the numbers I did. So the stock cam came out to 60. 230 to 240 duration came out to 48. 250 to 260 duration came out to 45. So that goes to show that you're actually making less overall power, even though you have the same amount of power. You know, it's not like you're losing any power, but you're actually, it's weird how even though basically this volume is representing the total amount of power of your engine. Now the volume, this water isn't going anywhere in this jug. It's all the same amount, but you can see just how altering it can change the overall amount of output the engine puts out. So when you start pushing the horsepower levels higher and higher, you know, you are making that engine overall less powerful. Weird, I know. So, you know, like I built an engine specifically for a dyno build. Now that engine made a ton of horsepower, but the dyno pull on it, you know, it looked terrible. It was just like a dead person's, you know, heartbeat. And all of a sudden it was just like bam, came up. I mean, this thing, you know, if it was on a mini bike or a track engine, you would just hit the gas and it would go, like not even get out of its own way. So when, you know, people call and they want a head, you know, they want me to help them select the parts for the bottom end of their engine, I have no problem doing that. But, you know, the most important thing to me is to know, like, where do you want your power? You know, and a lot of people will say, well, oh, I want it at like 9,000 RPM. You know, or they just, because they know the harder you turn the engine, the more power you'll make. Which is true, but there's a bunch of confusion over that. You know, you are going to have that higher horsepower number, but, you know, when you're building an engine, when they talk about more power under the curve, this is where that term comes from. You know, under the curve power, you know, is definitely what you want to build a track, you know, a track kart, you know, any type of like circle tracks, you know, road track karts. If you're doing any type of off-road racing, motocross, circle track on a mini bike, you know, dirt track, mini cup cars, any of these type of wedge bodies, champ karts, no matter what it is, if you are accelerating in and out of turns, you know, you need power under the curve. If you're a drag race mini bike and you set up your torque converter or the stall on your clutch to engage, so if you set up, so here's some representations. Let's go through this now kind of methodically. So let's say I am a go-kart racer, all right? Now, where I want my power really depends on, you know, how I drive, the gearing on the kart, stuff like that. You know, when you ride your kart around this track, you know, you don't want to aim your power, you know, for the highest RPM, because that's right when you're taking your foot off the gas. You don't want it to be peaking right as you're taking your foot off the gas. You want it to be like when you come out of the corner, you look down at your tack. That's where you want the base of this curve to start. And you want it to peak about 1,000 RPMs before you take your foot out of the gas. So if you say, oh, I come out of the corner at 4,000 and I take my foot off the gas at 9, you want 4,000 to 8,000 power band. You know, you wouldn't want to build it specifically for 9. So now if you were, say, a mini bike and you were drag racing, say if you have a Predator 212, gx200, doesn't matter what it is, and you're setting the stall on your converter high, and you're never going to use the low RPM range, or you could use it to, you know, get down the pit road or, you know, get back to the start, and like you're not going to not have any power, but you're not going to be making any significant amount of power. But say if you're a mini bike and you're just using this for launching this bike, you know, you set your stall really high and you set your stall or your engagement speed on clutches and torque converters basically at your peak power. Or, you know, depending upon your dyno curve or dyno graph, you know, you want it to be dependent upon how your bike's set up. You know, you might run from 7,000 to 11,000 RPM on a small block, or from 6,000 to 9,500 on a big block. And, you know, you would want all your power up top. You know, you wouldn't build that engine the same as you would a track go-kart engine. You know, those mini bike engines, you know, they're different than the track engines in the fact that they're not ever accelerating out of a turn. You know, that clutch engagement, from the time it engages to the time it stops, you know, that thing is basically at wide open throttle, and torque converters are just doing the work, or, you know, that's just the way they're set up, where they engage at this RPM and they go to this RPM. If you have a go-kart that, you know, you set your torque or your clutch engagement at 4,000 or lower, so you can come out of the pits and get onto the track, and, you know, safety flags come out and you have to do slow laps. I mean, you have to have somewhat of a lower engagement on the clutch. You don't want to set your clutch engagement on a kart at, you know, 7,500 RPMs. I mean, that thing would just be banging on for no reason, just as you're trying to keep up with the pack of cars. It would be kind of insane. So, I mean, they're just two different builds. That's basically duration in a nutshell. You know, and all of these things, all of those graphs I've shown you, basically have a corresponding compression ratio that goes along with it. So the more duration you have, the more compression you want, because, you know, as that duration goes up, the longer that valve is open for, you know, when everyone thinks about compression ratios, you know, people always say, oh, you can't run that high of a compressor. You can't run 16 to 1 on a big block and turn 10,000 RPM. You know, it depends on your camshaft. You know, if you have a lot of duration on your camshaft, that valve is open for a longer period of time. So when you measure an engine's for its compression ratio, you're taking into consideration that entire engine's volume. So, you know, but when the cam has a lot of duration on it, those valves are hanging open for longer periods of time. So it's not operating, you know, under, you know, just closed, open. These things are, you know, open, you know, periodically during that for lengthier times. It's not just like closed, open, closed. Oh, it's not operating like that. It's more like, so I mean, dynamic compression ratios change dramatically. That's why on a lot of the higher end camshafts, racing camshafts, they recommend that you have a duration or a compression ratio of 12.1 or higher. You know, and on some of them, you need even more than that. They're kind of putting it on the low end. And just so you know, the higher duration, the higher compression, the higher octane fuel you need. So don't think you're going to be able to go out and buy a race cam and run, you know, pump gas. You buy that race cam, it needs the high compression and it needs race gas. So if you plan on building a build that runs on pump fuel, do not buy a high duration camshaft, because you won't be able to run the appropriate duration. And you know, you'll end up making no power, if not dramatically less than you can with the stock crank. You know, now if you have just a stock duration camshaft, this is great for a snowblower or a piece of power equipment. You know, if you wanted to amplify this, all you would do is increase your compression ratio. That would bring the overall power of it up. You know, and you know, you could make a lot of power with a stock camshaft if done correctly. Nothing I would ever run, but you know, its power potential is there. It shows it. You know, it has that big wide part, and you know, when you do the amount of power under the curve, it has the most. So you know, you just have to find the right one for your build. You know, but if your build is supposed to be here and you pick this one, you know, you're sacrificing all those power numbers. You want to have the highest power number average that you can within your build's demands. So that's why matching, you know, that the camshaft is usually the first thing I pick when I talk to somebody. When they call looking for a head, I say, okay, well, what kind of camshaft do you have? Oh, well, you know, I haven't got my cam, or I have this one. And I said, well, do you plan on running that? You know, do you mind if I make a selection for you? So depending upon how open they are with the build or what they need, I mean, there are a few camshafts out there that I use that I know work, that, you know, the companies advertise them as their, you know, great cams, and they work. They're just proven. I mean, you could have a cam that sounds exactly the same and that cam just wouldn't perform the same. It's just because, you know, companies put a lot of time and money into creating ramp designs, figuring out lobe separation degree angles, you know, telling you what compression ratios to run, and, you know, the duration on the cam according to the Centerline. So that's just getting out of control with information. But yeah, so this is basically duration and how it affects overall average power production in the engine. My name's Paul. This is Paul's Karts. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I need to get 1,000 viewers by like another month and a half from now. you know, I've been trying to rack my brain on what to put for another video that was just knowledge. And, you know, I actually started thinking a lot of people were calling me lately about camshafts, and I'm like, maybe I should put another video just about duration, because this seems, you know, lift is pretty much, you know, the bigger the valve, the less lift you need, really. The smaller the valve, the more lift you need. You're just trying to get that average amount of air. But so Paul from Paul's Karts, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, share this video, and until next time, guys, have a great day.